So I understand you're all in some period of confusion, waiting for a b'china, and we don't know when it will be forthcoming. So just doing more chazaras is great. The more you chazer, the more you not only remember, the more you chazer, the more you will understand. There's a Gemara in Sukkot of Memvav. V'hoyo im shemoya tishma'u. The Gemara says, in tishma b'yoshon, tishma b'chodosh. And Rashi explains, what does the Gemara mean in tishma b'yoshon, tishma b'chodosh? Every time you go over yoshon, every time you chazer something again and again, you always will see something new. So since I was a very younger man, much of my learning, much of my chazorah was always on Shabbos, because in the middle of the week I write. And I always spent a lot of time writing. One of the Lametes Marochas is Kosev. And I didn't find any heter to write with a shinui, Divrei Torah. So Shabbos I don't write, and I don't travel. I don't give many shurim outside of my bismedish. I have more time to learn. So Shabbos, it was fun in my family because I used to give my kids codes to remind me Motzei Shabbos. And those codes were very strange codes, words that had no real meaning, but every word was another sugya. You know, when I learn in Shabbos, the Darke Shel Torah, Boine V'Soiso. So if you learn 20 blat, you have about 5 or 6 comments that you want to remember Motzei Shabbos. How would I remember so many things Motzei Shabbos? So I put together strange codes, and my kids always tried to figure out what could this mean, what could that mean. And that's how Motzei Shabbos I remember things that I need to write up. So Rashi explains, and Tishma b'yoshon, Tishma b'chodosh. Ato mevin dvorim chadoshim mitoich rishonim. That's what Rashi writes in Sukkah Memvav. So, before going on to new sugyas, I think it is beneficial just to wait, and we hope that the b'china will be forthcoming, and we could move on. So right now we're still in Hilchas קידושין, and the topic we will be discussing today is a common topic, and you would be surprised, but it happens now and then, and that is קידושין בטבעת שאולה. Very recently, I was Masari קידושין at a chuppah, and we're on the way to the chuppah, not yet under the chuppah, and I ask, where is the tabas? I always want to see the tabas before we go to the chuppah, and people start searching. It was forgotten in the car that brought the chazan to the chuppah, and it was a taxi. So now you need to call the company, and they should find the driver, so we're not going to wait an hour till... So the Kala's sister took off her ring, and she gave it, to the Kala, give it to the Chosin, and he should have a ring to be Makadosh. And that's what they did. Is it a proper קידושין or not? And that is the question of Tabas Sha'ulo. Siman Chov Ches Sif Yud Zayin. There's a Sif in Shulchan Aruch, and the Shulchan Aruch, based on Tshuvas Harosh, says clearly that Amakadosh b'tabas she'ulo, if the mashil, the person that lent the tabas, was aware that the shayal, that the borrower intends to be Makadosh an issue, then even though Shara lo kanya, hareizu mikudeshes. And that is Siman Chav Ches Sif Yud Zayin. Okay, Sifyut Tes, not Sifyut Zayin. Hashoel Chayfis Mechaveiroi. V'hoidiyoi sheroitza lekadosh boi isho mikudeshes. Ve'imrav arei ze sofek mikudeshes. The Rosh, in 2 different sources, deals specifically with this question. Perek Aleph Masechet Yishon Simachov, Tshuvas Rosh Lamed Hey Beis. And the Rosh says, If the shoyel was aware, and the mashal was aware, that the reason the shoyel is asking for this tabas because he wants to be mekadesh initial, harezu mekadeshes, beyond doubt, not a sufa kedushin, but vada kedushin. But if the mashal, the lender, wasn't aware why the shoyel wants this tabas, then it's a sufa kedushin. Because in that case, we paskin shala lo kanya, and that is twice in Shas. And about so Yudala that I'm socham davav, shala v'schidus lo kanya. When you rent something or you borrow something, you don't really have a proper kinyan. All you have in Lashon Kodesh is zchut shimush. You have the right to use this chayfetz, but it's not yours. Chayfetz HaShoel belongs to the mashil and not to the shoyel. And the Gemara deals with a few different questions. Chometz b'Pesach. Who is Oivan Bal Yeruah? Shvisas behemtoi. According to Beishamit, that there's an issa shvisas kalim, the question would be relevant by kalim. Shvisas behemtoi kuli alma moidim. So if a person borrows an animal or he rents an animal, who is Oivan shvisas behemtoi? And the loch is shala lo kanya. And therefore you can't be makadosh with the tabas she'ula, it's not yours. But if the mashal was aware that the shoyel intends to use this tabas lekedushin, then the Rosh is machadish a gevaldige chiddush. It is as if there is a clear stipulation. I give you this tabas ba'oifen hamoyel likadishin. And even though we used the term shala and shala lo kanya, it is as if there was a clear stipulation. And this tabas is yours in as much as you need it for Kiddushin, it should be valid. Your Kiddushin should be valid. So even though they didn't use the right term, because he said, Ani mash'ilecha, v'ani sho'el, and if it's shaila, the Kiddushin would not be valid, because both parties were aware that we intend to use this tabas Kiddushin, and therefore it is as if he said, Harei tabas zu she'ula lacha ba'oifen hamoyel lekiddushin. And that is the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. The Rama quotes a Tshuvas Asra dealing with a different question. Hu adin lesoicher kli or chayfetz mechaveiroi v'kiddush boy sho'al kli me'isho sheyesh labal v'kiddush bo. He borrowed a tabas or any other chayfetz from a married woman, and he used that tabas for kiddushin. Chosheshin lekiddushin. That's a suffix kiddushin, not a vada kiddushin. V'afar pi shekol ma shekontzeh shekon avala. So the woman had no right to give away this tabas to anyone else because it belongs to her husband. V'lo yishol men habal. Afar pi ken chosheshin lekiddushin. And the Rashba explains, maybe she asked permission from her husband. Maybe the husband granted her permission to give away or to borrow or to lend this tabas, and therefore chosheshin lekiddushin. And this is a Tshuvas Rashba. So the Mechaber paskins in accordance to the Rosh that hashoyal tabas al menas lekadesh bo'isho harezum mikudeshes, and it is considered as if there was a clear stipulation. If shala is sufficient, let it be shaila. If shaila is not sufficient, let it be matona. So even though they used, the language they used was, I am lending and you are borrowing, and if that is the case, the kiddushin would not be valid, but because both parties were aware that the reason I am borrowing this tabas is al menas lekadosh bo yesu isho, and mahana lekiddushin. That is as if this was a clear stipulation. There's a machlokes between two great poskim, Rav Chaim Shabbatai, Shalas Tshuvas Maharachash, and the Knesses Agedola, Ben Benisti, and his Sefer Shulchan Aruch. The Rashba quoted by the Rama, is it Soiser the Machaber or not? Is this a machlokes the Machaber and the Rama or not? Tshuvas Maharachash Sementes Vav says that the Rashba is Choylek HaRosh, and therefore Halocha L'Maisa It is a Sofek Kiddushin and not a Vadai Kiddushin. Why is the Rashba Choyle Kararash? The lesson of the Rashba is, this married lady gave her tabas. It was a similar story to the one I put on the table, the one I presented at the beginning of this year. A person wanted to be Mekadosh in Israel, and he says, I have nothing to give her. And a family member, who was a married woman, said, okay, take my ring and be Mekadosh the Israel. And that is what he did. And the Rashba writes, maybe she gave her tabas b'matone gemura. So Reb Chaim Shabbatai the Melachash is medayik from the Rashba. The reason we are choishes l'kedushav because maybe she gave b'matone gemura. But if it would be shaila, then ein choishes l'kedushav ki shaila lo kanya. And that is why the Rashba writes, the reason to be choishes l'kedushav is maybe she gave the tabas b'matone gemura. And the case there was that the Edom didn't remember. They didn't remember the language that they used. And the Edom couldn't say, they couldn't testify, was it a matona gemura? Was it not a matona gemura? And the Rashba says, we are choishes shemen osna b'matona gemura. So the Malchash is medayik from the lesson of the Rashba. It would be shaila, ein choishes shel l'kedushin. So the Rashba is choilek. And the Knesset Agdoila, Chov Ches, I don't know whether you're familiar with the Knesset Agdoila. It is two sections, Hagos V'Yosef and Hagos Atur. Hagos V'Yosef Chov Ches, the Knesset Agdoila says, there is no raya from the Rashba against the Rosh. What the Rashba means, if she intended to give a Matona Gemura, that would invalidate the Kiddushin, because her husband definitely wouldn't agree she should give away the tabas that he gave her. But if she intended to give it b'shayla, then the husband would have no objection. And in that case, it would be Kiddushin. So the Rashba fits in with the Rosh, and there's no stira whatsoever. So the Machlekes Knesset Agdoila and Merchash, whether it's Sofa Kiddushin or Kiddushin Vadai, the Rashba quoted by the Ramah, does he disagree with the Rosh, or there is no contradiction between the two? But the big pella on these Achronim is there are two mefurish dekachuvas and Rashba which they did not see. Neither did the Beis Yosef see these chuvas, and that is a chiddush. Chelik Dalet Simen Reish Ayin Gimel, Chelik Vav Simen Beis, two chuvas and Rashba, and the Rashba clearly rejects the Rosh. Now, the Rashba doesn't quote the Rosh, the Rabbi can't quote the Rosh. They were contemporaries, but the Rashba was about 40 years older than the Rosh, so the Rashba cannot quote the Rosh, but the Rosh sometimes quotes the Rashba. Did I ever tell you this fascinating story about the history of the Rosh and the Rashba? And they had somewhat of a relationship. So, I don't like to tell the stories twice because I don't like to bore people. But the Rosh was a Talmud of Maram Rothenburg in Germany. And that's when the Crusaders invaded Europe. And Maram Rothenburg had three great Talmidim. His three greatest Talmidim were the Mordechai, the Rosh, and the Agos Maimonides. The Mordechai and the Agos Maimonides were murdered by the Crusaders. They both were murdered, and the Rosh fled. He ran away, and he traveled south to Muslim Spain, and that is where the Jews found refuge from the Christian Crusaders. So the Maram Rothenburg died in custody. He died in jail. As we all know, he was many years in custody. Two of his three great Talmidim were murdered, and the Rosh flees with his family, and he arrives in Toledo. And Toledo, those days, was Toritula, that is called in our sources. On the way to Toledo, he visits Barcelona, and he spends some time with the Rashba. And the Rashba is moved and inspired by this young Ashkenazi scholar. And then something unprecedented happened, and the Ashkenazi Rosh, a Talmud of the Maram Rothenburg, becomes the undisputed leader of Sephardi Jewry. And he was the Gadol Ador in Spain. The undisputed leader of Sephardi Jewry was the Rosh. So historians say it is because the Rashba said some nice words about him, and the Rashba was the king in Spain, and that is how this strange phenomena came to be, that the Ashkenazi Rosh became the greatest authority in halacha in Kilot Sfarad. So, two tshuvas and Rashba, in which the Rashba brings the svara of the Rash and he rejects it from two sugis in Shas. And that is Chelik Daled Shein Gimel, Chelik Vav Sameh Beis. And the Rashba clearly deals with the tshuva in which a person was mashil, and he uses the Loshen Shaila et Tabas for a person to be Mekadesh. And the Rashba says, Eino Mekadeshes because Shala lo Kanya. He rejects the raya of the Rosh, and he brings two rayas against the Rosh. So what's the Rosh raya? That we say she is Mekudeshes, and that's a Gemara Masechet Moed Kotten. A person that borrows a beged, and a family member died, lo aleinu, is he allowed to do kriya on a borrowed beged? And the halacha is no, because it's not your beged, and you have no right to ruin this beged. However, if I borrowed a beged from a friend and I told them I'm going to visit a family member that's gravely ill, then I could do kriya. And that's the halacha. Because he knows where I'm going. And he should have been aware that if I'm going to visit a family member that's sick, he might die while I'm wearing this beged. And therefore we assume I am entitled to do kriya on the beged. So the Rosh argues, but it's shaila. You borrow this beged and shaila lo kanya. So from this halacha the Rosh proves, but if he gave me the beged knowing that I might need to do kriya, then he gave me permission to do kriya. So the same goes, if he gave me this tabas knowing that I intend to be mekadosh an isha, then he gave me this tabas on the condition that I could be mekadosh an isha. Says the Rashba, the reason you could do kriya on the beged is not because the beged is yours. It's not because your kinyan extends and it goes beyond shaila. It's not your beged, it's his beged. But he agreed that you tear his beged and then pay him compensation for giving back a torn beged. But your kinyan will never go beyond shaila, because if you borrowed, that is all you have. So the reason I am entitled to tear the beged and do kriya is not because the beged is mine, because the condition was you could tear my beged, but a beged with kriya is worth less than a beged without kriya, and then you're going to pay me, the loss. Today, I don't think a beged with kriya is worth anything, but that is the interpretation of the Rashba to the Sugya Meir Cotton. And therefore the Rashba argues, this doesn't prove that a kinyan shaila could go anywhere beyond shaila. And I think the Rosh probably was aware of this chilik, but the Rosh still argues. In normal circumstances, you cannot destroy a chayfetz hashol. It is only because we assume, if he knew I might need to do kriya, then it is as if he gave me permission to do kriya. To do kriya, it doesn't necessitate that a beged is mine. But if we assume, knowing that I might need to do kriya, it is as if he gave me permission to do kriya. Knowing that I want to be mekadosh an isha means he gave me permission to be mekadosh an isha. And bearing in mind that to be mekadosh an isha you need a kinyan gomer, it is as if he gave me a kinyan gomer. Comes along the Rashba, and the Rashba says there are two sugis in Shas which are soisa contradict the Rosh Svara. And that is lulav hashol. That's a sugya ruching in Sukkot of Memalef. Eino dem yoytze dechavose b'lulav hashol. Why? Because it's not luchem. Shala lo kanya. But the person knows that there's no reason in the world for a person to borrow a lulav and sukkahs unless he wants to use that lulav. He's not going to borrow a lulav to scratch his head. So if he borrows a lulav, it is clear that the reason he's borrowing this lulav, he wants to be yoytze. And nevertheless, the Gemara says he is not yoytze b'lulav hashol. And that's a stila l'divrei harash. The other sugi is getting chofo midbeis. A woman gave a tavla to her husband in the intention the husband should write a get on that tavla and give her a get. And the Gemara says that get would not be valid because the get needs to be written on something in sole possession of the husband. He needs to give her the get. But this tabla belongs to the woman, it doesn't belong to the man, and therefore the get would not be a kosher get. And the Gemara says because a woman is not familiar with Dina Kinyonim, and she wasn't aware that she needs to give him this tabla, Kinyon Gomer, otherwise the get would not be valid. Why don't we say it is enough? She was aware that he wants to use this tabla to write a get, and even though she doesn't know the halachas and the details, it is as if they stipulated that I am giving you the tabla ba'oifin hamoil leksivas aget. That is exactly the svar of the Rosh with the tabas sheula. Yes, we spoke about borrowing and lending, but you knew that I want to use this tabas to קידושין. So the Rosh says it is as if they stipulated this tabas is yours ba'oifin hamoil lekiddushin. Why wouldn't we say the same in Gittin Daf Chof Amud Beis when a woman lends a tabla to her husband to write a get? So these two sugyas, the Rash rejects the svar of the Rosh, and he directly brings this svar, and he rejects. And therefore, the Even Ezer Simon Kuf Lamed Vav says, "Halocha l'maisa, it's a sofek kedushin, and we cannot rely on the Machaber, even though the Machaber paskins in accordance to the Rosh. But it is a klal godel b'hoiroa, which the Ramo writes in Choshen Mishpat Simon Chofei. If we find a psak and an achron, and we find Rishonim that totally go against that psak, and the achron wasn't aware of that source in the Rishonim, we will always paskin in accordance to the Rishonim. Assuming if the Beis Yosef would see those tshuvas in Rashba, he wouldn't paskin the Rosh. And this assumption, anybody that's familiar with the Beis Yosef, it is clear as daylight. If there's a machlokes Rashba and Rosh, what would the Beis Yosef say? Lo yehoyu machnis roishoy bein horim gedolim. The Beis Yosef would say it's a sofek kedushin. It's a machlokes between the two giants, the Rashba and the Rosh. And because the Beis Yosef doesn't bring these two tshuvas, then the Avnei Nezer paskin sofek kedushin. Comes along the Mishkenas Yankov. Are you familiar with the Mishkenas Yankov? I don't remember whether we ever spoke about him. Who was the Mishkenas Yankov? Anybody know? The Yankov Mekalin. He wasn't the Kalina Rebbe. He was actually a big misnaged. Kalin is a city in Lithuania. So 200 years ago, there was a Kalina Rebbe there, but the Mishkan Sank was a Talmud of Reb Chaim Evolozhin, a brother of the Keren Oira. These two Gedolim were some of the greatest Talmidim of Reb Chaim Evolozhin. And it seems as if they made a chalukah. You know, you're going to be the Lamda and I'm going to be the Poisek. The Keren Oira has amazing sforum on a few Masechtas and Shas, and the Mishkan Sank is Chuvas. And what is unique about the Mishkan Sank? He's not afraid to go against the Shulchan Aruch. He was, in the tradition of the Goen, and his Talmidim, the Mishkan Yankov is a very choshev sefer. Choshev Mishpat Siman Lamed Beis. He goes beyond the Avnei Nezer, and he says the Rosh is a das yochid, and we're not choshesh the Rosh, going against the Shulchan Aruch, because he's a das yochid, and it's too much of a chiddush. So he says the Rashba was choylek on the Rosh. It's not only the Rashba. Tov Reish Nun Ches Siv Gimel, Sif in Shulchan Aruch, Halacha and Rambam, Ein Odom Yotzei Yedoi Choyvo Belulav HaShol. And no Rishon says you could be Yotzei Belulav HaShol. So he says, a Sugya Mefareshes a Masechet Sukkah, Lolav HaShol, and all the Rishonim, Stimas HaRishonim, go against the Rosh. According to the Rosh, there's no reason a person shouldn't be Yotzei Belulav HaShol. And the same in Gittin Daf Chof, but more so, Lulav HaShol. It's a Braisa, Psak and Rambam, Sif and Shulchan Aruch. We don't find any Rishon that says you could be Yotzei B'Lulav HaShol. According to the Rosh, why not? So he says the Rosh is a Das Yochid Mamish, and the Sif and Shulchan Aruch is a mistake, it's not right, and we paskin Eino Mikudeshes. And that has taken this to an extreme. Against the Sif and Shulchan Aruch. So that's his argument. To Rezov, not in Simen Tov Reish Nun Ches, but rather in Hilchos Sisis and Simen Yud Dalet, asked this question: how would the Rosh deal with the sugya of lulav hashol? The Rosh doesn't bring the sugya. All the Rosh brings is the sugya about kriyas habeged and moed kotn. But how would the Rosh deal with the sugya of lulav hashol? I never understood the Taz. And the Taz writes, lulav hashol is a gzeres hakosav she'ein odem yoytze. Lochem. If it's a gzeres hakosav, we don't rely on a umdana. We assume it is as if they stipulated that the lulav will be yours, ba'oifen hamoya letzeis yedei choyva. If it's a gzeres hakosav, we don't rely on an umdana. But קידושין, it's a svara. It's קידושין kesef. How could you make קידושין with something that's not yours? And because it's a svara, we rely on umdana, which is totally difficult to stand. What is the difference where this halacha comes from? Whether it's gzeres hakosav or a svara, why would that make a difference? Is it a powerful enough umdana or not? Why would it make a difference whether the din is a gzeres hakosav or a svara? Could I have a Shulchan Aruch Tov Reish Nun Ches? Because I know that the Magen Avraham deals with the same question. I would like to check it. Tov Reish Nun Ches. Lanias daiti. I think I would suggest a very simple teretz to Memiyashiv Shittas Rosh, and to differentiate between the two sugyas, gitten and lulav, and the sugya of קידושין. Just want to wait a moment for Avtala to come back. Yes. Yes, what would you like to say?
That the difference between whether it's doraisa or a svara, if the Torah says that you can't be yotze with lulav hashol, so it can't be that there's an umdana that can go unspoken and still have you be yotze every time with the lulav hashol, because then the Torah has done nothing. Then the Torah has done nothing by asking for lulav hashol.
Why
because
not?
There's always going to be the umdana that'll save you and let you be yotze with this kind of lulav.
No, if a person takes a lulav without permission. He took it without permission, so definitely there's no kinyan. And we would say it's not a lulav agazul, because nichalele enish dele eved mitzvah b'mamoinai. There would be no isra of gezel, but still einoi shaloi.
So, but then it'll be the same thing. If he'll give me the umdana because he wants
No,
me to,
but the umdana is only when a person gives you something, and our question is, to what degree did he give you the schedule? But if he's not aware at all that you took his lulav, then it's a lulav she'ein shaloi.
I wouldn't have the nichale because I'm not doing a mitzvah with it. So manavshach, he'll either want.
It would be nichale if you could be yoitze, but you can't be yoitze because it's not lochem. So the Magen Avraham deals with the question, but he doesn't come with an answer. I would suggest a very poshut achiluk. When a person borrows a lulav from a friend, if you're not a lamdin and you're not aware of the gzeres hakosav of lochem, there is no intent at all to a gather of kinyan. And borrowing would merely be interpreted as, I don't mind you using my lulav. It's not more than a sinus rishus. But there is no intention at all of giving. I'm not giving you the lulav. I don't mind if you want to use my lulav. When you come to a person's house and you use his cup or his spoon or his fork, that is not defined as borrowing. You're in my house. I don't mind you sit on my chair. It's not that I'm borrowing you the chair. So when a person gives his lulav to another one, there is no hatchola of gidrei kinyan. It is merely giving you permission. Please use my lulav, like you sit on my chair. you use my cup when you're in my house. And the same with a get. It is not a svara that a person needs to write a get on his possession. Only a lamda knows that. But by Kiddushin Kesef, every ignoramus understands that the husband is giving the wife a gift to be Mekadesha. That's what Kiddushin is all about. And every lady will understand, if you want to give me a ring, please give me the ring. It is not that you'll let me use your ring. So when we're dealing with a shoyel tabas lekadesh boy isha, the lender knows that he's giving. How much does he need to give? What is the gather of giving? That is where the Rosh says, if he's aware that he's giving this ring for Kiddushin, it is as if stipulated, I give you the ring in as much as needed for Kiddushin. But when you lend or a lulav to your chaver, he's not aware at all that he's giving. And if he's not aware that he's giving, there could be no umdana that I am giving ba'oifen hamoyel lelulav. I wasn't aware that I'm giving at all. I had no intention of giving. My sole intention was, I don't mind if you use my lulav. So the entire svara of the Rosh is only when there is this fundamental kavana of somewhat of a kinyan, of a tcholas a kinyan, of schus shemush. So when you give a person a tabas to be Makadosh Anishi, you are aware. If you want to be Makadosh Anishi, you need to give her something. So even though they thought it is enough if you borrow a tabas and you give it to the Isha, and she's going to use it for the time being until she needs to give it back. In that case, we say anan sehada. It is as if they stipulated. I'm giving you this tabas to the degree necessary to validate the Kiddushin. But in the case in which a person isn't aware b'chlal that he needs to give, and is just giving permission, you could use my lulav, you could sit on my chair, and in that case, it is unreasonable to say that he's giving the lulav b'oifen hamoyel. And I think the svara is such a svara yeshora and a svara pshuta. I think that is what the Rosh would answer to his superior, his mentor, the Rashba. And the Rosh would say, I think I'm right. And your kashas from Gittin and Lulav, yesh li yashiv, b'shofi. And therefore, I think the Mishkanas Yankov went beyond his pay grade. You can't be choylek on a Shulchan Aruch and say that the Rosh is a das yochid. No. The Rosh is a very valid opinion. V'yesh li yashiv, the sugya of Lulav, and Lulav is no raya against the Rosh. And that would be my yishuv, lo kedivrat Tazva Mogan Avraham. But Aloch HaLamaisa, the Avnei Nezer says, it's not more than Sofik Kiddushin, because it is clear in two tshuvas of the Rashba rejects the Rosh. So it's interesting. These two Gedolim, the Malchash and the Knesset Gedolah, have an argument whether the Rashba is Choylek or Rosh, because they only saw this Rashba that the Ramah is quoting. Now, the Ramah is a Taima. Let's go back to see the Ramah. Ma kosev Ramah. Shoel kli meisha sheyesh labal v'kiddush boy choshen shem kedushav. Afal pi shema shekon se shekon ba'ala choshen kedushav. But this is the Rashba, and according to the Rashba, shala lo kanya. So how could the Ramah put in the Rashba's mouth shol kli meisha lekadosh boyisha? That's wrong, because if it's shaila, the Rashba clearly says shaila lo kanya. And if you lend a tabas to be mekadesh isho, ain't a mekadeshes. This lashon shol klima isho is not the lashon of the Rashba. It's not found in Jewish Rashba. It's the Ramah, because the Ramah, following the footsteps of the Machaber, paskins according to the Rosh. So we assume that shaila mahane le kiddushin, So the Ramo doesn't mind to present the Rashba in a distorted way. According to the Rashba, Shul Kliman Uishal Kadosh Vayishu Ein Mekadeshes, Ein Chosheshem Mekedushav. Even if the husband does agree, but it's Shaila, and according to the Rashba, Shaila Lokain. So this troubled me till I looked in the Rashba. This is not to be found in the Rashba. The Rashba doesn't speak about Shul Kliman Uishal. The Rashba speaks about a case in which a married woman gave her tabas to the husband, to the chosn to be makadosh deisha, and the Edom do not remember what was said, and were choishesh shemen nosna b'metuna gemura with the husband's consent. This question, shor kliman ha'isha, according to the Rashba, ein choishesh in the kedusha. It's not what the Rashba deals with. But the Ramo felt it legitimate to present the question in this style because we paskin according to the Rosh. Shulchan paskin according to the Rosh. And the Ramo wasn't aware of those two chuvas that asked where he's choyrek on the Rosh. If the Ramo would be aware of those two chuvas, neither the Beis Yosef saw those chuvas, probably he wouldn't use this language, Shor Kli Maneshu, because it goes against the Rashba. And the Rashba wouldn't agree to this halacha. So neither the Beis Yosef nor the Ramo bring the Rashba. And therefore the Avnei says right, Sofek Kiddushin. The Mishkeles Yankov is not right, saying Ein Chosheshim LaRosh because he's a Das Yochid. No. As I explained, I think the Sugya in Masechet Sukkah doesn't contradict the Rosh at all. And I think the Svara I said is a Svara Pshuta Misyasheves Alalei. So Lochal HaMaisa, Shala would be a Sofek Kiddushin, Machlekes Rosh and Rashba. So in that case, I say we need to do it again tomorrow. And more than once, I was in the situation I needed to invite a Chosn and a Kala over to my house and do Kiddushin again. A very well-known Rav was a Masada Kiddushin, and a day or two after the Chasana, it became clear that the wife of one of the Edom was the first cousin of the Kala. And the Masada Kiddushin didn't ask. And that's Psula Yedis and Eina Mekudeshes. So this new minig that Gedolim come to a chuppah for 3 minutes, Yainei Mozet, Tifchoi Tavuach, they come and they say the brocha and they leave, that's a minig ra. Masada Kiddushin bears responsibility. He bears responsibility, and he needs to ask the Edom and verify that neither the Edom or the wives would be related to the Chosn or the Kala, or to each other, or the wives shouldn't be related. So this very Choshev Rav, and I'm not mentioning his name, was Masada Kiddushin, and Ein Kiddush of Kiddushin, because a woman, the wife of one of the Edom, was a first cousin of the Kala, and that's a Psul D'Oraisa, and Kiddushin B'ri Edom, Ein Chosheshin Kiddushav. So I invited this couple, and they were very distressed. And I told them, not many people are zeicher to be mekadesh their wife twice, and that's a big schus. Twice, and chas v'sholom in the most beautiful circumstances. You know, it's not a matzah gedushosa. You were mekadesh your wife more than once, and that's a big schus. That's the best I can do.
Did another bracha seriously?
No.
Because they weren't 10?
Why not Enu Berchasez? Which is a very good question. There's an amazing Chazanish, which I never really understood, but it's a Chazanish. I don't like to argue with the Chazanish, so the Chazanish says. Do you have a Chazanish Eben Ezer? Probably not. Is the one here? Minchasosha Shut Chelik Beis? Okay, now you will see my shortcomings. Does anybody have a cell phone to call my son-in-law Bainish? Do you have his number by chance?
We can have his number.
Yeah? Sure. Does anybody have it? Rav Teller definitely has it. I don't remember. But he would remember where the Minchas Osher is. I quoted this Chazanish in Minchas Osher.
don't know if I have it.
So as I said, these questions come up. Could you quote Baynish?
Yeah.
Ask him where I quote them in the Chazanish about Berchas Eilusin. And try to find it, but I probably won't. Why I paskin that we don't need to do a new Berchas Eilusin by קידושין בלי עדים. You're amazing. What's your name? Baynish. Just a minute. No, it's not the one. Not the one I'm looking for. I'm sorry.
He's still amazing.
Still amazing.
Still
yeah.
Baynish.
No, maybe. It's about Berchas Eilusin. Are you sure you're trying to call Baynish?
Yes, maybe I should come to Bro's phone.
My phone is in the car. Maybe look Berchas Eilusin. Or קידושין בעדים פסולים, I don't know.
It should be this. It should be the קידושין very soon.
Yeah, yes.
That should be.
Yes. חלק א' and חלק ב', I think I quote the Chazon Ishtua. קידושין בעדים פסולים.
It's second
בפסולי
cousin.
עדים.
Second cousin.
That's what I mean.
Huh?
This one?
Maybe. Is this חלק ב'? חלק א'? Which חלק do you have?
It's
Is it?
Weiss.
I'll find it.
Oh. Chazanish. Doesn't have Avana. It says Nunu Bracha. Kol she'asa b'shus asa, afsha kol asa b'shus.
Okay, where's the Chazon Ish?
I don't know if I have it. Where the Chazanish says, Minchas Asher קידושין Chelik Samach Gimel. No? Mari Bruna. Samach Zayin.
Reisha in Dalet. Okay, here we are. This okay, so sorry. No. Have you sure remember? To my dismay, the Sefer is not available now. It's out of print. So you did you try to call Baynish?
Yes.
Didn't answer? So many times when I speak about the godless of the Shoyla Meshiv, I said the only tshuva sefer I know in which the very same tshuva is printed twice in two different chalokim is the Shoela Meishiv. And the point I try to make is, not always do we understand the circumstances under which these Gedolim learned Torah. Tell him I really need him.
Shuvas Chelek Beis.
No, the Chazanish. Where's the Chazanish?
The Chazanish. Yeah, no, now with the Chazanish. No, where does the Rav quote the Chazanish?
No. בעינש, תקשיב לי. פה בכולל יש לנו את ההוצאה הראשונה של חלק בייס, שבו אותה תשובה נתפסה. ואני לא... אין את מחזניש. איפה החזניש? אני באמצע שיעור, אני צריך לשאול. איפה החזניש? לא המנפסות של החזניש. So I speak about the Shoela Meishiv. They'll call me back immediately. And a person told me...
AI gave me a lot of options.
What?
AI gave me a lot of options.
So a person told me, I know another sefer in which the same tshuva was printed twice. And I said, no. Who? He says, Minchasos. And I was in total shock. Because I didn't write 10,000 tshuvas like the Shoela. He said, that cannot be. And he said, look it up. This tshuva about a Mekadosh v'nimtza Eidem Psulim is printed again in Chelik Beis. So I say, but the Minchas Osher wasn't so disorganized like the Shoela Meishiv. Chelik. Okay. Chelik Beis, Minchas Osher Pei Gimel, Chelik Aleph Tzadik, exactly the same tshuva. Awful. So in the second print of Chelik Beis, we changed this tshuva. Because no justification for a person like me to print the same tshuva in two different halakim. So you have the very first print of Minchas Osher, so you have the very same tshuva print of Chelik Aleph Chelik Beis. In a later print, Chelik Beis, tshuva is different. Where's the Chazanish? So I need to read this Chazanish to you because it is so interesting. Samach Gimel, Chav Gimel. Okay. לעניין הברוכה לא יכפס לן, כיוון דרשאי לזבנה ולברך הברוכה קיימס, וכן בקידוש התורס, הברוכה קיימס. Kiddush Torah, you don't need to say a new broch. Kivin shebochu b'shosha hayu re'uyim levorech, va'af shehoya b'tos ra'ui ha'odam levorech es Hashem b'kol hayom. Ele she'ein reshai laharbois b'zeh, uke'en she'amru siyamtinu lekul shvocha, ולכן צורך לסנאיג בגדורים מיוחדים, ולזה הגדירום חז"ל אמס לבורך. וקבוע השעה שאודם יויסה מוכן בקורס בוירוי וחסודו וכל שעושה בשוס חושב ברוכה ויויסה בו שכבר הגיע שעה המוכנס אף שהויסה בטויס. And I don't know what he's talking about. So what's a brocha levatolo? You said a brocha on a mitzvah and you have a posel lulav. You don't need to say this beautiful description fits every brocha of the Torah. You said a brocha on a pri, and the pri fell, and you take another pri. Sifnu shochan, you need to make a brocha. You made a brocha on a lulav, the lulav is posel, you need to make another brocha. Why? The Chazon is so beautifully explains. Like Kiddush Torah, you don't need to make another brocha. Because ra'ui la'odem levorech es Hashem kol hayom. אלה שצורך לנהוג לפי הגדורים שהגדירו חז"ל, וכיוון שברך בשור שראוי הויה לבורך, הברוכה קיימס. I would say these beautiful words on every brocha of the Torah, so I don't know. But the Chazon Ish lahedya posak, that the Kiddushin Psulim, you don't need to say another brocha, I told this couple, don't say a bracha. So, Harei Mekudeshesli, 2 proper Eidim, and they lived happily ever after.
You have to change the date on the ksuba?
What?
To change the date on
No, there's no need. No need. Because the Ksuba, the Eidim, there's no need to make a new Ksuba. So this Chazon Ish is an amazing Chazon Ish. Samach Gimel, Chov Gimel.
He's only talking about Berachas Shalach, right?
No, Berachas Eidim is a Berachas Mitzvah. According to the Rambam, we're dealing with Berachas Mitzvah.
And he's going in that Shita?
Yeah, the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch Paskins is Berachas Mitzvah. That's what's so strange about it. Rav Kalman, thank you. This is an amazing group of in the life.